Welcome, everyone. We are so excited tonight to learn about activities to support motor skills. It is an important skill for us as parents and professionals to understand how to adapt and to accommodate the skills that your child needs when it comes to motor skills. And we are so excited to hear from Melanie and Pamela this evening. So, Alale, if you would like to offer the Spanish instructions.
Yes, thank you. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todas y todos. Nos da mucho gusto que estén aquí con nosotros. Les pido por favor que puedan pasar al canal de español para si necesitan interpretación en el idioma español. Muchísimas gracias. Mi nombre es Arely. Thank you.
Give us just a second. Thank you so much, and you ladies take it away.
All right, well, welcome everybody. We're so glad that you're able to join us this evening. So our presentation, as you all know, is activities to support motor skills. So we're going to be talking a bit about some different general strategies as well as ones that are very specific to individual skills. And we'll also leave you with some resources as well to help you out. So my name is Melanie Perot. I am an associate professor at SUNY Brockport, and I'm also the communications director for the Institute of Movement Studies for individuals with visual impairment. I'll let my colleague Pam introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm Pamela Beach. I'm a professor in the kinesiology department at SUNY Brockport, and I am a co-founder and co-director of the Institute. We call it IMSV for short because it's a mouthful, so welcome.
All right, so before we get started, we just kind of want to get a snapshot of where everyone is from. So we have a QR code on the screen. So if you could pull out your phone, get your camera out, scan that, and it should take you to a very brief survey where you can type in where you're from. And then once you do that, I'll pull up the results there. You have a hand raise. Looks like. Can't really tell. Let's see.
I did just see it. And now I don't. I think it's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
All right. So I'm going to pull up the results here. Hopefully. I cannot see my screen very well. Come on. There we go. It's over here. There we go. Sorry about that. It was very slow to come up. All right. So let's see. We've got Kansas. We've got Oregon, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Philadelphia, or sorry, Pittsburgh. Person's from Pittsburgh is probably mad at me right now. Sorry about that. Virginia, Massachusetts, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Texas, Canada, New Zealand. Excellent. So it looks like we have quite a variety here. So it's really great to have such a different diversity of locations represented for our presentation today. So to kind of give you guys a little bit of a snapshot about where we're from. So we're from SUNY Brockport. So SUNY stands for State University of New York, and we're located in Brockport, which is just west of Rochester, New York, located in kind of more of upstate New York. And we are also, again, affiliated with IMSV. So IMSV is our institute, and basically we have four main pillars that we kind of do work in. So one is in programming, another is in education, which is obviously why we're here. We like to educate other professionals in the field as well as parents on all the research and the things that we do so we can better help children with visual impairments and additional disabilities. We also do a fair bit of scholarship, and we also provide leadership opportunities.
Right, so we wanted to just give you an idea of who in particular we're talking about. We're focusing on youth. So really more of our younger children, but also children that are still really trying to gain some of those basics and fundamental motor skills. We'll be talking about any variety of sensory impairments. So it could be visual impairments, deaf blindness, and as well as children with sensory impairments, as well as some other disabilities. So our next question is, we want to kind of get a picture for what you're working with or who you're working with. So what disabilities does your child or children have in addition to visual impairments? So I see some people are putting them in the chat. So either is fine. So we've got the Mentimeter, or you could put them in the chat. A little multimodal going here. So we've got some CP in the chat. Spastic quadriplegic, neurological, physical, and intellectual hypotonia. Charge. I'm actually wearing a Charge shirt right now. I don't know if you can see it. All right, so, all right, in the Mentimeter, we've got a lot of autism. So you're probably familiar with these word clouds. So the words are bigger if there are more people that are putting that word in. So it looks like autism is the most common, as CP is up there. We have two, written it out versus the acronym. CVI, intellectual, hearing loss, deaf blind. All right, so a good variety. I think we can go ahead and move on. So to get us going, I wanted to share a video that we did at the last Charge Syndrome conference, which fortunately was almost 4 years ago because of COVID. So what we did was we put together just a short video illustrating them doing a variety of fundamental motor skills. So of course, they're in a wide variety of abilities as well as severity of their charge. So we have skipping. An example of a girl skipping, and she's going from one end to the other around some cones. We have a boy running. So he had a lot of fun with his running. All right. And so what they were doing is we were doing some assessments looking at 12 different fundamental motor skills, and half of them are locomotor, half of them are object control or ball skills. So we have one child doing some galloping, hopping, and so it's not just hopping in place, but hopping as a forward progression. So which is a pretty tiring skill if you haven't done it for a while. Sliding, so sliding is really more of a side gallop. And then horizontal jumping, so trying to jump forward. We want them to kind of crouch down and then extend their legs forward and use their arms to help propel them. We have underhand rolling, overhand throwing, forward striking, so they're to bounce the ball and then strike it, hitting a ball off of a tee. And then catching. All right, so now that you're a little more familiar with some of the fundamental motor skills, if you weren't already, I want you to share what some of the fundamental motor skills, so some of the skills that I just mentioned, we saw in the video, they're also listed here on the slide. So what are some of the skills that you feel your child does well? So share some of the ones perhaps they're picking up more quickly. We have balance on there as well. Feel free to add balance if you'd like. We've got run, hop, walking. So walking is kind of your pre-emerging motor skill for your locomotor skill of running. So running is typically the first that is developed, but it can be pretty difficult, especially with sensory impairments. A lot of children don't realize that they need to have that flight phase, so have both feet off the ground. So that tends to be one that can be a lot more difficult for kids that can't compare themselves to others. They might not be able to see others and compare what they're doing. Okay, we've got jumping and jumping on a trampoline, kicking, rolling. All right, I think we can go ahead and move on. Thanks for sharing. So then conversely, we wanted to ask, what are some of the skills that your child or the children that you're working with that they need to improve on? So what are the ones that they perhaps struggle the most with? So I see some in the chat. Here they start to come in. So balance. All right, balance is really important for all fundamental motor skills. It's really underlying everything that we do, both dynamically and statically. Arm strength, stepping, skipping. Skipping is a difficult one. It's one of the later ones to develop. Just coordinated movements, crossing the midline, catching. All right. Catching is difficult, tracking the movement of an object. All right, trying to catch them on both. All right, stepping down, motor planning. Okay, running, skipping. All right. Okay, so I think balance stands out the most there. All right, so there's a lot of research to support that children with visual impairments are developmentally behind their peers with motor skill development. And of course, if your child also has some additional disabilities, then they're likely to have even perhaps a larger delay. So if they are kind of vanilla blind, or they only have a visual impairment, physically they should be able to do all of these different skills. So a lot of times they're just not exposed to a lot of the different activities that their sighted peers might be. And so we see the second bullet, the severity of the lag is correlated with the level of visual impairment. So the less visual information that they have, generally the more behind they tend to be in comparison with their peers. And there's a lot of support to show that there's very limited knowledge, and this can be across the board. So teachers often don't have the knowledge for working with children with sensory impairments. The support staff might not have knowledge either on the end of the disability or visual impairment, and or more of like the PE or physical activity side of things. So maybe they understand the disability, but not so much how or what kinds of activities they can do to support them. And parents, again, often don't understand either. So what are some things that they can do to help support their child with a visual impairment and perhaps other disabilities as well? So there's a lot of barriers. So first of all, the main barrier that I said is just that lack of knowledge. So there's a variety of physical characteristics. So there's a lot of range in the capabilities of each child. Lack of recreational or sport opportunities. So unfortunately, a lot of kids get left out because there isn't enough modifications or that awareness of how you can include them. So they often don't get some of those opportunities. Lack of appropriate facilities or modified equipment. Again, the parental knowledge or the knowledge from the physical educators. So there's not a lot of curriculum to develop PE teachers for visual impairments. So a lot of them are not prepared to work with that one kid that they might have at once every year or so. They might not know how to be able to include them.
All right, so now I want to lead you guys into some instructional strategies. Basically, what can you do in your role as a practitioner to help facilitate motor development, especially these fundamental motor skills, because they're so important early in life. So the first ones I'm going to start with are a little bit more general, so they can apply across the board. And then I'm going to show you a short video that was developed with the support of the Lavelle Foundation that we did that's going to be more targeted at very specific fundamental motor skills. All right, so the first one I want to talk about is pre-teaching. So pre-teaching is basically exposing the child to kind of the unit or the instruction that is going to take place in the future. Usually this is done shortly before the actual lesson that's going to occur. So this could be in a physical education setting, but obviously it can be in other settings as well. So it's basically almost priming the child for what's going to come so that they feel familiar with some of maybe the terminology or maybe some of the concepts prior to being exposed to them for the first time with the other students without disabilities. So it could be reviewing the equipment, what's the layout of the playing surface, could be also what are the rules involved in the different activities, maybe some of the teaching cues. So again, this is done prior to any kind of formal instruction, again, usually in combination with children without disabilities. So even if you're, obviously if you're a TBI or comms, you're an APE teacher, these are good things that you can do. However, time is always an issue, especially when we get into physical education settings. We found that APEs or regular PE teachers don't feel like they have enough time to always do this with their students. So this is something that might be helpful for a parent at home if they have the resources to maybe kind of touch upon some of these things prior to when they know a child is going to be involved in their PE class. So another approach that you can use, and a lot of these principles we're going to talk about revolve around this idea of universal design for learning, basically making learning experiences accessible for all, no matter your level of ability. So one of the things you might want to look at is the type of equipment that's being used in the environment. So for example, you can see on the screen there, they're using balloons. So it has an auditory stimulus whenever someone strikes it. It also is quite a bit large target. You can use brightly colored balloons as well to provide some high contrast. So those are always good. Those are some good ways that you can utilize that as a piece of equipment. Making sure that you have maybe some tactile surfaces, even having like a board laid out that shows the playing surface, but has raised where the lines are. That can be very facilitating for a child with a visual impairment. Using anything with like an auditory source is always helpful. So sounds, different textures, different sizes can be very advantageous. So you kind of have to play around with it a little bit to see what's best for the child that you're working with. Another thing you can do as well is modify the rules. So using universally designed rules within a game. So one of the things you could do is make sure that you utilize any type of intervener or peer mentor, or it could be any kind of support that the paraeducator that the child has to help support them during the activity, as well as provide their preferred communication style as well. So that can be very beneficial. Some things you could do as well is maybe just slowing down a game. Maybe if the pace is too fast for a child with a disability, could be that, doing something as simple as, utilizing scooters to perform some type of sport or activity, kind of taking away the running component, kind of puts everybody on the same level and it allows to slow down the game a little bit. Batting off of a tee, that's a very common one to use in baseball. So if the individual is having trouble tracking, maybe even with a ball with an auditory stimulus, having that kind of stationary one could be very beneficial so that they could have some success at the task. Utilizing guide runners, also using taking out defenders in open skill sports can be a really easy way also to kind of modify the game a little bit to make it a little less challenging. We can also universally design the environment. So things like making sure there are clear boundaries for any type of activity. You can even provide tactile boundaries on the ground so that the individual knows when they're reaching that area. Making sure the lighting is appropriate for the activity that's being performed. Decreasing excessive sound. So this can help in a couple different ways. Obviously, if you're working with a child with visual impairment, it allows the child to hear those auditory stimuli much easier. But also if you're looking with like an individual who has additional disabilities where there's a sensory component where they get overwhelmed with excessive noise, that could also alleviate that concern as well. Using tactile cues is very beneficial, and also using a multi-sensory approach to teaching. So not just focusing on what something looks like, what the skill looks like, but kind of integrating, how does it feel? What does it sound like? So using all those different approaches can be beneficial to all individuals who are involved. And then we have universally designed instruction. So the first bullet point up there, pre-teaching, I've already touched upon, so you're familiar with that idea, but again, that's always a good thing to include. And then the next bullet point talks about an approach called whole, part, whole. So basically this principle is that you expose the child to the whole, either sport or the whole motor skill, and then you can break it down into its individual parts. So they really need to understand the whole component of the activity or the whole component of the skill before it's spaced out into its individual parts. And then you put the whole piece back together again. So that's a really good approach to use. And then there's a couple of teaching techniques that are also really beneficial. The first one is tactile modeling. So this is where a child will actually feel a model go through the action of the skill. So for example, if you're demonstrating how to throw, the child might hold on to the model's arm as the individual goes through that throwing motion so they can get a sense of what it feels like. So that's a really good approach to use. And then another one is physical guidance. So with this one, instead of the child feeling someone else perform the action, they have a person kind of guide them through the action. So they get a sense of what that motion feels like, but they get the added benefit of somebody kind of moving them through it so they know that they're doing it correctly. So those were all kind of principles that apply across the board for multiple motor skills. But what I want to show you now is a short video that talks about how to implement very specific strategies targeting individual fundamental motor skills. So again, this was a video that was developed through funds from the Lavelle Foundation, and this can be found on our Campabilities website, which will give you resources at the end. So I just want to show you this so you can get some really good ideas for individual skills.
Running. One option for running and walking is to use a guide wire with a carabiner and looped rope. A second option is a tether, which is a short rope held by a guide and the runner. This option works well for running, walking, and wheeling in a chair. Option 3 is a human guide leading a student who holds the guide's elbow. Option 4 is circular running, which one does in a field or grassy area using a stake and a long rope. A treadmill can also be used to walk or run. Hopping on one leg, galloping, and skipping. Students can hop, gallop, or skip using similar techniques as running, utilizing a guide wire, a tether, a human guide, or circular running. They can also execute these activities in other ways. They can move next to a wall for security or touch the wall for physical support. They can hold onto another person or a bar for balance assistance. They can even use a pool for these locomotor skills. Sliding. The student can slide next to a wall, a guide wire, or with physical support. They can also slide with demonstration. Jumping. Students may jump independently or with physical assistance. The student can step over a mat, line, or a rope with tape over it. The student can jump onto a mat or jump next to a wall for support. In this section, we will go over object control skills.
So unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time to show the entire video, and there's also fitness skills on this video as well. So it has a lot of really good information. And the beginning section of it kind of talks about some of those general strategies I touched upon earlier as well. So this is a really good resource. And again, it's available on the Campabilities website, so you'll have access to it. But I want to turn it over to Pam. She's going to talk about a little bit about an assessment that can be used as well.
All right, so I know that we're basically out of time, so I'm just going to very quickly talk about this assessment as well as some other resources. So this assessment is available also for free. It can be used by teachers, OT, TVIs, whomever wants to use them. There's many different skills included in here, and it's just a very basic assessment. So this one is for children that have more severe disabilities, and gives you just a simple way to kind of look at how to kind of some different things to assess them on. So IND is independent, PPA is partial physical assistance. So if they need some assistance, and then TPA is total physical assistance. And then you can just put in their scores for each and then get a total sum of the scores. And so we have a lot of different assessments for different sports, activities, different levels. So I don't know, Melanie, if you could just kind of scroll a little bit to just show on this one shows a variety of different skills, but there are also a variety of different assessments available as well. So just to give you, if nothing else, some ideas of what should you look for. So this one is for children that have more severe disabilities, and it can give some where you need more assistance, like with the power wheelchair, for example. And we're focusing on pre-emerging motor skills. So you're not at the same level. So what are some basics, just to see some levels of independence there. And we just wanted to make you aware of the many different resources that we have available for free. So one is the Gross Motor Development Curriculum. This is a handbook. The full book is available on our website, and we have an accompanying video that goes through everything that's in the curriculum to give you some tips for a variety of different activities for different fundamental motor skills as well as fitness skills. So it's similar to the one that we just showed you, but this one's just focused for visual impairment, and the other one is for additional disabilities. We have the physical education and sports for people with visual impairments and deaf blindness. And so this goes through a wide variety of different activities, sports, opportunities from every level, from young children up through adults, actually. And physical education for children with moderate to severe disabilities. So again, if you're looking for some tips and activities, how can you modify? What are some different things that you can do to keep your kids involved and help them progress? That's another great resource. And this is just a few of the videos that we have available online. There are many different videos. The balance strategies is one that we did with kids with CHARGE syndrome, and we're just going through some different activities that you can do either in a class or at home, one-on-one or in groups. So for some very basic activities, we have a para-educator teacher training. The motor development instruction is the one that paired with the handbook that I mentioned. We have videos for many different sports, recreation activities, outdoor activities. There's a lot of different options. So if you're looking for tips and ideas, that's really the place to go. We have everything housed under Campabilities. So if Melissa hasn't already, I'm sure she's going to put in the sites to find those. So the sport inclusion series covered some coaching tips, which again, doesn't have to just be used by a coach. It could be used by a PE teacher or anyone working with a kid with a visual impairment and would like some ideas for different things that they could do. And here are again some more, just showing you that we do have quite quite a lot of different activities. So the American Printing House for the Blind also has a huge repertoire of books, products, equipment, and videos. There's a lot that's available for free. So if you're feeling like you don't know where to start, I highly recommend taking a look at APH's website and looking at our Campabilities site and looking under instructional materials or under the Lavelle link, and you'll get a lot to really get going on. Perkins also has a lot of options. USABA has a lot of sport related activities, adaptations and modifications. So there's a ton of opportunity out there and resources. So I know that we have met our limit. So thank you all for coming. Here is our contact information. Feel free to email us anytime. We're happy to connect with you and share some ideas. And I guess if anyone has time to stick around a bit longer, we're also available for questions now.
I just want to say this was jam-packed full of so many things that I am so ready to try or do with children and students. And I just cannot thank you for all of the information that you both have provided in the work to support families and professionals. So thank you so much.